Thanks for being here.
All right, let's get started. Our next speaker is Lieutenant Colonel Roy White. He's a U.S. Air Force retired and back for America, and he will speak about the radical Islamic ideology and the rise of radical Islam. Lieutenant Colonel White. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And it's an honor to be up here with the sheriffs and first responders, and I want to say thank you to everyone here in Wilson County for coming out tonight. Let me first of all take off my jacket. I had some people ask me, what is this symbol? This symbol. It is the letter, the first letter in the Arabic for the word Nazarene. It is the letter that is placed on the homes of Christians who are in Islamic-held countries in which those individuals there in the Islamic government are going to take ownership of those homes. They take this symbol, put it on the house or on the post outside their homes or on the wall, circle it, letting the local imams and the other religious leaders know that this is where the Christians live. And these are the homes that we're going to take ownership of. Think about that for a second. You go home tonight and on your post where you live right now, you see this symbol in a circle. We have people in San Antonio who are members of our chapter, Act for America. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But we're going to talk about the ideology of Islam and not about Muslims. It's important for us to separate the two. People oftentimes accuse us when I go and talk or when other folks from Act for America talk and they say, oh, you hate Muslims, you're a bigot, you're an Islamophobic. You may have heard those terms too when you've had discussions. Well, let's ask yourself, when you go and talk about communism, does anyone ever say, oh, you must hate Russians? When you talk about Nazism, oh, you must hate Germans. I'm talking about words on a piece of paper. That's what ideology is. We'll talk about those words here in a little bit. We're against an ideology that is anathema to what we here in America want to live by and what we have lived by. But there are people in the world who have an ideology, just like communism, socialism, imperialism, that wanted to live a different way. And they hide behind the religion of Islam. And there is a religion of Islam. And as someone who fought in the military, who defended those freedoms, if people want to practice the peaceful portion of Islam, that's fine. And I have Muslim friends who are doing exactly that. Because the greatest abuser of Muslims are other Muslims. Muslims are being killed by other Muslims at a phenomenal rate. Women, children, people who are not following Islam the way it's supposed to be. And we're going to talk about that.
Am I supposed to feel sorry?
Arabs versus Muslims. What's the percentage of Muslims who are Arabs? Anybody know? 15%. The largest group of Muslims in the world aren't Arabs. They're in Indonesia, Malaysia. They're Asians. There are many Christians, Maronite Christians. There are Chaldean Catholics. There are Coptic Christians. All Egyptians, many other Arabs that have suffered under the hands of Islam. And it's important for us to understand and make that difference. We're talking about the political aspect of Islam. And who determined that? A man by the name of Muhammad, born in 570, lived there in Mecca, grew up without a father, age 2 or 3, lost his mother, and then passed around from relative to relative as an orphan being raised. And eventually at age 25, after being a merchant and a trader, became a businessman there and was married to a Jewish woman named Khadijah. And she was 40, a successful businesswoman. Imagine that in the Arab world. And she was, and befriended him, and then eventually hired him as her agent, and then eventually married her. And at age 40, in the year 610, Muhammad began to have these visions. And all Muslims will understand this because there's three things that a Muslim will tell you about their faith. That A, Muhammad was the most important prophet and he is following Allah. And that his life is the perfect life for a Muslim. All Muslims, whatever he did. So following Muhammad is the number one. In fact, it says in the Quran 91 times, follow the way of Muhammad. That's pretty clear. If you do what Muhammad does, you're going to be a quote, good Muslim. So let's take a look at what he did. The second thing that Muslims will tell you it's important is that the Quran is the holy grail. It is the Bible, not really the Bible, because there are many other things. Because if you want to be a good Muslim, you can't just read the Quran. Because 61% of the Quran talks about you and me, the kafir, the infidel. It doesn't talk about how to be a good Muslim. Yes, a small portion of it. But 61% talking about you. That's politics. How to deal with you, how to talk to you, how to deceive you. There's some peaceful portions, and we'll talk about that. And the third thing is that Muhammad was the last and best prophet going. After Jesus, anybody after that, up to Muhammad, Muhammad's the last and best guy going. So follow him, do what he says, and this is what's going to make our faith strong. So those three things. So let's look at that. Muhammad married Khadijah, and in Mecca, he's a religion of one. There are 360 pagan religions that are there in the city, and he's trying to win those people over. So what do? You start to make your religion look a little paganish. You got a cabal, we'll do a cabal. You got a quibble, you got a stone, you got a kiss, we'll kiss that. We'll do what you do. But come to us. We've got the real world. Because he began to have these visions in the year 610. And for the next 23 years, he began to have those visions. And for 13 of those years, he was in Mecca. And let me tell you, it was tough going. His third convert was a Christian. So Jew, Christian, and he lived among some Jews and Christians and had been a traitor. So he knew some of the stories about the Jewish religion. So how do you convince Jews to come over to you? You start saying, hey, guess what? We're going to pray to Jerusalem. Get on your knees, we're going to pray 5 times. We're going to do that. So they didn't pray to Mecca initially, they prayed to Jerusalem. Why? To win friends with the Jews. To gain their confidence. So you'll see things written in the Quran in the Meccan period, which is when he was there, that was all very favorable to the Jews. We're going to be your friends, treat them as the same. You know, your religion is your religion, my religion is mine, everything's all good. And 2/3 of the Quran is in Mecca. Then the Christians come along. He's got to win some Christians buddies over. You want to grow a religion, you've got to appeal to people. Hey, we like Jesus. Jesus is in the Quran. I've had this holy experience because he never saw Gabriel. He never saw Allah because that was too far out there. He's not worthy enough to have a conversation with God. So he had a conversation with Gabriel, who was also an angel, that the Christians, that Jesus and other prophets. And he talks about the prophets that are in the Bible. And he tells those stories in the Quran. It's not being written down, it's all oral tradition. But sure enough, after 13 years, he's got 150 followers. How's that working out for him, Muhammad? 13 years, I got 150 people talking nice to him. I'm not talking jihad, I'm just trying to talk nice to him. Well, after a while, they've had enough of it because he was beginning to defend them, trying to make some statements that they knew were completely out of whack. And these are all Islamic stories. This isn't Roy White making up this stuff. This is all from Islamic sources, from the Quran. The Quran, as I said, doesn't tell the whole story. So what are some of those other sources? The Hadiths, 800,000 little stories, little snippets that are all put together, and by some followers, years later, they throw out all but 4,000 of them and say, oh, these are the qualified ones. And these are the stories. This is the biography, this is the story of Muhammad. Some are as short as 3 or 4 words, some are maybe a page and a half. So that's another part of the trilogy. What helps you learn to be a Muslim? The Sunnah, and then finally the biography, an 800-page documentary that was written 200 years after Muhammad died, from some notes that were taken years earlier. And they began, those 3 documents, the Quran, the Hadiths, and the Sunnah, the biography, all became what Muslims followed. There's more history about Muhammad than there is George Washington. They know how he took a bath, which foot he stepped out of the toilet with first, how he made love with folks, how he went to the bathroom, how he brushed his teeth, how he picked his teeth. All of those things are documented in how, because it's a religion of works. It's following the path of Muhammad. 86% in the Quran is talking about how Muhammad lived, 14% about Allah. This is a religion, this is an ideology about one individual. Not about Allah, but about how you live. So we've determined that in Mecca, he lived very peacefully. But after he is expelled out of Mecca, he goes to Medina, 200 miles to the north. And now he is faced with the reality that 13 years at this rate, we ain't getting it. Well, he's just like anyone else. He's been offended by what's going on in Mecca, and he begins to turn his trade into something very different. And comes up after his 5 pillars of Islam. And those are, pray 5 times a day, do your Hajj, give to the poor, the alms, and those items become the elements, along with a new item called jihad. He promotes jihad because he's now going to war with all the Meccan caravans that are now up and down the coast that are coming by. The first 6 times he gets his butt beat. And he has, in fact, this leader, this religious leader, 26 battles that he personally commands to go into battle with. Is that a religious leader? Not necessarily from our definition, but from an Islamic tradition, he begins to gain followers. Because guess what? If you win and you go out, you get 80% and we get 20%. I get 20%. Muhammad gets 20%. Well, if you're living in the desert, you're not doing real well, 80% looks pretty good. Or split it up among all your other, good friends. And at the end of the day, they begin to grow. And oh, by the way, if you don't convert, guess what? You got 2 choices. You either convert or you get killed. 3 major tribes there in Medina as he begins to grow. Jewish tribes. They were made up over 50% of the population of Medina. And sure enough, they begin to say, what kind of religion? You're talking about Jews, the prophets, and all that. We don't know any of that in the Bible. That's not in our Bible. And he begins to take offense to that and begins to make up engagements, examples of things that didn't happen, treaties they broke, and he begins to one by one knock off the 3 tribes. And he gets down to the Quraysh tribe, which was the last one. And in 627, after he's been attacked last time by the Meccans, he turns on the Quraysh tribe, and the trench that he had used to defend himself against the Meccan soldiers who would come, he now turns in and captures the city and takes the women and children, slaves, all slaves. And matter of fact, takes the leader of the Quraysh tribe, not Roy White's story, Islamic sources in the Quran, in the Hadiths, and takes the wife of the Jewish leader as his bride. Not voluntarily, by the way. And then lines all 800 of the remaining Jewish men of age and and slices every one of their heads off. How many of you knew that? A few of you. I was on an airplane talking with a Muslim friend of mine who I had just met, and I told him that story. And he looked at me, that couldn't possibly be true. There's no way. It happened. Why does he not know that? Because many Muslims don't know it. Many are secular Muslims. Many have taken the choice of, I'm going to live my life here in the West. Because I was born, as he said, I'm born a Muslim. How am I going to be anything other than a Muslim? But he doesn't pray 5 times a day. He doesn't go to the mosque. Doesn't do anything. A lot of Christians could say the same thing, sadly. But at the end of the day, Christians aren't chopping people's heads off. But there are Muslims who are taking Muhammad's behavior. Remember what I said? If you behave like Muhammad, you're a good Muslim. You're not a great American. You're a danger to me. So the irony is, if you're a good Muslim from a Western perspective, you're a bad Muslim from Muhammad's standpoint. And it doesn't matter what talking heads on O'Reilly, it doesn't matter who's talking on Beck's show, it doesn't matter who is talking on CNN. They're talking heads. The only Muslim I care about who says something is a guy by the name of Muhammad. And the only way you know that is to read. The Quran means recite, read. Don't believe a single word I'm telling you tonight. Do not believe a single word I'm telling you. Go and read the Quran. But when you read the Quran, the Bible starts at the beginning, the narrative chronologically goes pretty easy to read. The Quran, longest verse shortest verse at the end. Doesn't make for an easy read. Why do they do that? Don't ask me. Gives you an ice cream headache phrase. But you can go on the web and find out very easy which of the 143 surahs or chapters, or 114, how many go in which order. And you can read them in order, and just as I just told that story, that's how it flows. But that makes it difficult because Muslims, the Islamic ideology, Muhammad said, don't take your Qurans, don't share them with others. Now, they didn't have a Quran at the time, but they didn't want the infidels to know this. They don't want them to know. Because it's about you. They don't want you to know what their playbook is. They don't even know what their playbook is. Many of the Muslims do not even know. And that's the sad part. That's the very sad part, because they're being abused also. And as a Christian, my duty is to love them and to think about what do I do. And fortunately, the good news is millions of Muslims are leaving Islam today through dreams and also, quite frankly, because of the horrible things that ISIS and others are doing. Because they're finally waking up to the reality that this is the Islam I signed up for, and finally they're reading the Quran, they're understanding. Because you can't just pick and choose what you want out of the Quran and truly be called a Muslim. Now you may say you're a Muslim, but imagine this. You go home right now and you tell every friend you know, I am turning my back on whatever is the most important faith in your life. Whatever the benchmark is for you. And every friend you have is going to disown you. Your job is going to go away. Your family, your kids, your grandkids, you'll never get to see them again. That's what Muslims, that's the cult aspect, that's the tribal aspect of the power that Muhammad has built into them. The fear that they can't leave this. Because if they do, they lose everything. And they're in a foreign country. Now, as I was struggling 5 years ago, as I began to read the Quran and try to understand, after having 3 rotations in the sandbox, I had a hard time trying to put my head around this. So I started reading the Quran, but I started looking for an organization, and the young lady who talked about, don't just talk about it, do something. I looked for an organization that was actually trying to do something about this. And that was called Act for America, led by a lady by the name of Brigitte Gabrielle, who just spoke recently here in San Antonio.
Amazing woman.
Have you all seen Brigitte on TV or
Yes.
something? Great American. Lebanese Christian woman who grew up in the 70s and lived in a bomb shelter from the age of 10 to the age of 17. And why was she there? Because Hezbollah was trying to kill her because she was a Lebanese Christian. Simple as that. And after she got out of Israel, she got out of there, who saved her? The Jews did.
Israel.
The Jews did. They're in Israel. She came to Israel, lived there for a while, then came to the United States. And in 2001, when 9/11 occurred, she had 2 girls. And around 2003, more terrorism was occurring. And finally, her young girls looked at her and asked her the very same question that she had asked her father when they were in that bomb shelter. Why are they trying to kill us? Why are they trying to kill us? And the simple answer is, she said, I said the same thing my father said 30 years earlier, just because we're not Muslims. And she said, that's crazy. I'm going to do something. So one person started an organization, and now there are 260,000 members, 800 chapters around the country, and we're doing things. Things like, are you aware that in the U.S. court system today, we just did a research project. Sharia law, there are 85 Sharia courts in the UK practicing Sharia law. And that's the UK. In 2002, Texas had a Sharia law case occur in Richardson, Texas. In the recent survey we did, over 140 court cases in the United States, in 32 states, U.S. judges that people elected or were appointed sat before the court and said, we're going to apply Sharia law over U.S. local, state, or federal law. That shouldn't happen because of Article 6 of the Constitution, but oh, by the way, at least I remember in civics class, but judges are making those decisions. So in 9 states, we passed a law called American Laws for American Courts that has not been successfully challenged anywhere in the country to prevent Muslims or anyone else applying a foreign law, in this case Sharia law, from occurring. Act for America is promoting that and working with other groups that are doing that kind of work. And that's important. There are many other legislative actions as well as the Benghazi Accountability Council. Brigitte sits on that to make sure that the folks in the House, that joint committee, gets to the bottom of Benghazi. We're working on the border. We're trying to do some things with that. We're trying to get our border secure because we understand OTMs, other than Mexicans, are coming across the border and are a threat to us. The fine officers who are back here, you can't get the training you need because the federal government has eliminated from the FBI and many other agencies the area information that I'm talking about. You can't get the information you need. So we have a project called the Thin Blue Line on our website that any law enforcement officer can go to and register and give them the proper credentials, and they can get information that their own government won't give them because it's not politically correct. Tells them where the threat is, and in a non-PC kind of way lets them know. That's what Act for America is doing. I've left some business cards up here. There's some in the back. Just got my name and Act for America, and there's some information on the back, some of the websites I said encourage you to go to and look at. And don't just take my word for it. Go and visit those. Pick up a card. If you want to get on our newsletter, we meet once a month in San Antonio. I've talked to people about trying to have a chapter down here. If you'd like to do that or want to talk to me afterwards or email me with your interest, we can help you start that. But you can start that in your own community. I was just told today about an Islamic cemetery that's either not here in the city or in the county, I guess, or adjacent county, or here in this county. Now, why is that important? You should be able to bury your loved ones wherever you want. It's important to understand the significance of having an Islamic burial ground in your city. or in your county. Because that makes it Islamic holy land. No different than the proposed Cadorba Mosque that was in New York City. When Muslims die and are buried in a local area, that becomes a very religiously significant to those who follow Islam very closely. I'll take some questions. I know we're running short of time. Yes, sir. You can go to actforamerica.org, and that'll give you some of the information. If you want to know locally, you can go, just email me, and we'll get you on our newsletter, and we can get you some of that information, sir. You bet. And the information is up here. Yes. This is our third time that we've attempted to get ALAC passed here in the state of Texas. And thanks to Joe Strauss, it is tied because other groups have gone up there, Islamic groups, CARE, Council for American Islamic Relations, and others, and quite frankly, some other groups have come, ACLU, some left-wing groups that we kind of expected to come in, and we have learned from that, and we've got a better strategy, I think, this time around, so I'm hopeful that this time around, but like the young lady said, we will energize you, if you're interested, to write to your local representative at the state level and the senators to say, we need this bill and to get it passed. But that's exactly the kind of pressure points we've been told and will work. So, yes, sir. Tackitt. Tackitt is a concept within Islam that Muhammad told his followers, and again, back to the way Muhammad lived, Muhammad was asked by one of his followers, hey, you want me to go out and kill this guy, but the only way I can do that is he's a business criminal. I know him, but I'll go out and do it, but I'm going to have to lie to him. And Muhammad said, go right ahead. If you lie in the name and to promote Islam, Taqiyya, that deception is in the eyes of Allah, A-OK. And that is not exactly part of our DNA in America. And that is something for us difficult in terms of trying to judge people. It's getting to know, making snap judgment on Muslims is not a thing you should try to do or should do. But, yes. One of the things that within Islamic, when they are a small minority, just like when Muhammad, when he was just 150 followers, he couldn't tell anyone what to do. When they got the power, they controlled things. And there's only 3 Islamic countries in the world that apply Sharia law very strictly, directly. But there are many other countries, 53, I think, in the Organization of Islamic Council, that all follow bits and pieces of Islamic law. I want to cut this short. I can go a lot longer. I want to give my time, and I probably go over time. Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Addicott is a great American. He's going to really kind of tie into what I've talked about. And I don't want to necessarily introduce him, but I just have that much respect. I want to say that to Jeff. So there you go. Thank you very much. I do have one question before you leave. We hear this all over the news. Does Islam stand for peace?
No.
The answer is yes. Islam stands for peace because from an Islamic standpoint, there are 2 worlds that we live in. Dar Islam, which is the world of Islam, and if you're a Muslim, it's peaceful. Dar al-Arab, which is the infidels, you're at war. So, just like it's black and white. There is black and white all the time in the Muslim world. And when you say Islam is peace. When everyone is under Islam, you'll be at peace. That's what their definition. It's the same way, do they believe in suicide? They say, we don't ever believe in suicide. What? So, I mean, these suicide bombers, that's not true. They don't, in the truest sense, someone who's blowing themselves up is not committing suicide. He's attacking others. So it's all about definitions and nuances, so.
Right.
Anyway, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Jeffrey Addicott. If you read his bio on the handouts you've received, it's amazing. He definitely has been very much involved with terrorism, and he understands all the issues to deal with that. He's a terrorism expert at St. Mary's School of Law, Dr. Jeffrey Addicott.
It's a great pleasure to be here, and it's a wonder to share the stage with such distinguished fellow panelists. I know it's kind of late in the evening, so I'll try to move along. I'm going to talk about terrorism, and of course, as a law professor, I run the Center for Terrorism Law, which is located in San Antonio, Texas. And that's at St. Mary's University School of Law, which is the best law school in San Antonio. It's the only law school in San Antonio. I can't be contradicted on that one. I did 20 years in the military. I'm from Alabama originally, and I was the senior legal advisor to all the Green Berets and Special Forces, and I had the opportunity to serve my country on a variety of hazardous duty fire engagements, shall we say. So I did terrorism things in the real world. Retired in 2000 after 9/11. I founded the Center for Terrorism Law. We have a $700,000 facility at the law school. We've been operational now for 11 years. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. We had Governor Rick Perry come down and celebrate it with us, and Marcus Luttrell. If you haven't seen the movie Lone Survivor, he is, of course, about his experiences. We do a variety of things. We represent soldiers wrongfully accused of war crimes and ROE violations. The only law professor that works at Guantanamo Bay for the government. You have legions of law professors that work for the poor little darlings down there that are detained just so misunderstood. I guess I approach things in my military mind. You tell the boss is wrong, and then you tell them how to fix it. So during the Bush administration, I met President Bush 5 times, went to his ranch, and I would criticize President Bush often about his policies. Nothing personal. It's just I want America to look good. I don't care about the person in the White House. President Obama knows exactly who we are, but he hasn't called me for any advice. I've testified before the Senate. I've testified before the House of Representatives. Done about 4,000 media interviews and over 700 speeches around the world. And so there's two things that your mama tells you to never talk about in polite company. And I know we're a polite company because we're here in God's country here in Floresville. And that is religion and politics. Well, what we're talking about, of course, is directly related to religion and politics. We have two political parties in this country, and obviously we know that politicians are like used car salesmen, right? I mean, I don't care who they are, Republicans, Democrat, or whatever, they're like a used car salesman. They'll come in and say, this is the best car in the lot, right here, best car in the lot. And of course, being from Alabama, we have three categories of lies. We have damn lies, and we have damn Yankee lies. Now, with the current administration, nothing personal, but this is just my opinion, for a used car salesman, for example, you say, the salesman says it's the best car on the lot, you say, okay, buddy, can you open up the hood and let me see the engine? With the Obama administration, when you open up the hood, there's no engine in the car. There's nothing there. It's absolutely incredible. And again, I've never met the president, nothing personal, but his national security policies have been disoriented to reality from day one. He has tried to change the narrative about what the real threat is in this country. And of course, the word terrorism, you hear it today, the terrorists did it. Well, who's that? Terrorism is a tactic. How do you make war on a tactic? What is terrorism? Well, you use violence against civilians. The Chinese, the old Chinese proverb is that you kill one and frighten 10,000. It's killing civilians to instill fear, to cause a government to do something or refrain from doing something. So terrorism is a tactic. You can't make war on a tactic, but notice how they say the terrorists did it. That doesn't tell you who they are. If you're going to win a war, you've got to identify the enemy. You've got to identify their center of gravity, and you've got to crush them. That's how you win a war. No half measures. When you go to war, you go to war. And of course, that's been a phenomenon of both Democrats and Republicans in this country. Remember Colin Powell, if you break it, you own it. No, you don't. If you break it, it's broken. We don't own it. And so when we crushed you in Afghanistan in 2001, my position was leave. We have no obligation to fiddle around there. Because the day we leave, even my liberal acquaintances, I don't have any liberal friends, but even they admit that when we leave, that country's going right back to H-E blankety blank where it came from. And all the lives we lost and all the treasure doesn't mean a thing. It's not our job to police the world, to reform the world, to sprinkle magic fairy dust here and there. When we are attacked, we respond with overwhelming violence, we crush them, we find somebody that's not too badly burned and haven't signed a peace treaty, and we tell them, if you mess with us again, we'll be back and give you double this time. But of course, these are lessons that we have seemed to forget. We've forgotten. We have rules of engagement right now in Afghanistan, and President Obama didn't start them. President Bush had the same supercilious rules of engagement that tie both hands behind the backs of our soldiers as they get slaughtered. We are pouring out the blood of our soldiers like water on the sand for nothing. President Obama's surge cost us 1,000 casualties, and the Taliban, or he calls it the Taliban, is stronger today than it was before the surge. Great strategy, wonderful idea. And so let's go back to terrorism. There are four groups that there are four groups that use terrorism as a tactic. The first one is just a criminal nut job. We had one of those up in Killeen, Texas recently in the military. He got on post and killed some people. He was terrorizing people. And then, of course, the narrative was, well, they didn't let him go see his mama on leave. And, of course, what causes crime? Anybody know what causes crime? Criminals. That's right. You got the golden answer. Criminals cause crime. They're rotten kids, they're rotten teenagers, and they're rotten adults. Poverty doesn't cause crime, and wealth doesn't alleviate crime. The Kennedy clan, for example, they were born with silver spoons in their mouth. And that clan, you name the crime, they've done it. From murder to rape to robbery, larceny, lying, stealing, everything you can think of. In fact, when the Kennedys have their reunions up in Kitty Buckport, they got to call the National Guard for that weekend for the extra DWIs. So, wealth doesn't alleviate crime. Criminals cause crime, and criminals are arrogant people. What is an arrogant person? They're hypersensitive about themselves and insensitive about others. You can quote me on that. That's what they are. They're hypersensitive. Everything's about them. The world goes around them. They don't give a darn about anybody or anything except for themselves. And so I'm not, trying to psychoanalyze these people, put them in jail, put them on chain gangs, and work them until they drop. And that's how you do it. All the poor little darlings, though, we treat them with kid gloves, we coddle these people, because there's a lot of chickens that need to be plucked up in the chicken factories. If you can't find illegal aliens to do it, we got lots of prisoners to do it. And if you have a prisoner that's abused, you have a bad guard, well, you put the guard in the chain gang. You don't get rid of the system. You don't make rules for the exception. You make rules for the general principle. So these nut jobs could do terror once in a while. Then the second category, you have right-wing extremists. Now, what is a right-wing extremist? Timothy McVeigh is often quoted as a Christian right-wing extremist. He wasn't a Christian. He said, I'm an agnostic. And so he wasn't a Christian, but he was a right-wing extremist. These are people that have an inordinate, hypersensitive fear of big government. Now, I have a fear of big government, and of course we were founded as limited government, but these people are off the tracks. In fact, they get on the internet and they talk about President Obama has these concentration camps set up, and I try to go out and buy 223 ammo, and the prices go through the roof. Because everybody's out buying up the ammo with the guns. The Obama administration is not that competent. They couldn't put a concentration camp together if they wanted to. It's the most incompetent government I've ever seen in my lifetime. So take a chill pill. And so when they go off and they have these bizarre ideas that they're going to target symbols of federal authority, they target symbols of federal authority. Oklahoma City, we had a fellow that crashed a plane into the IRS building in Austin. Remember that a couple years ago? So that's what they target. When they use violence, they target symbols of federal authority. And then we have left-wing extremists that use terrorism. What's their problem? Well, left-wing extremists are the group hug people, the we are the world. You've heard of violence never solves anything. Really? Of course violence solves things. And basically they're socialists. They do not realize that God is a capitalist, right? Thou shalt not steal recognizes the private ownership of property. And the 10th commandment is don't lust after your neighbor's goat, dogs, and everything else they got. It's their property. So God's a capitalist, and God is a nationalist. He's not an internationalist. Liberals are internationalists and socialists. They want to spread everything around, and they want a one-world government. What happened to the first United Nations, Tower of Babel? He struck that bad boy down. Because God understands what Lord Acton, he said, power corrupts. Yeah, that's just a principle. When our founders put this country together, they understood one thing. They started with a premise, and their premise was that man is no damn good. Right? Right. And so they set up a system of checks and balances, term limits, and have one branch of the government watch the other branch of the government. They wanted limited government, but their premise was that power corrupts. And it's true. So if you believe in freedom, you're a nationalist. You're a capitalist. Oh, we got bad capitalists. You have to put them in jail. That's how you deal with bad capitalists. And, the dummies always see a bad capitalist, and they assume that socialism is the answer. Socialism is inherently evil. So these folks that are on the left, they target symbols of capitalism. They'll target the lumber yard, or they'll target the Hummer dealership, or they'll target the animal research facility because, spiders are just like people too. And then, of course, they hate anything that, despoils the environment. When they write the history books about us, folks, God never put a dumber people on the planet than us. We're sitting on 400 years of energy, and we won't drill it because a bird might get oil on its wings. I eat birds. I don't know about y'all. And then the caribou up in Alaska, barbecue them. I don't really care about the caribou in Alaska. Don't really care. I want $1 on the gallon of gasoline. I mean, who are these people? In San Antonio, we had a blind spider that they discovered. Stopped the whole project. Millions of dollars. People that can squash it. This is insanity. Absolute insanity. I mean, it's just like, wow, really? And so we're living in an environment where just political correctness infects everything. Because people are afraid to stand up. And they don't understand that, they can only kill you one time. That's it. As Shakespeare said, a brave man dies once. And a coward dies 1,000 times. 1,000 times. I know I've got my own little folder of death threats over the years for people. And I would say, there's my gray pickup truck. Meet me in the parking lot and bring help. Because I'm not going alone. Okay, so the left-wing extremists, they will target symbols of capitalism. And then you have the last category that we're facing today is radical Islam. I use the term radical Islam because Roy's correct about the issue of Muslims. Why are you what you are? If you're a Catholic or a Baptist or whatever, why are you what you are? You were born that way. Most Muslims, they have no idea what's in the Quran. They couldn't tell you up from down. Just like most Christians, they don't know much about the Bible, but I'm a Christian. And then they'll say, I love Jesus. Really? Oh yeah, I love Jesus. Okay, let me ask you 10 things about Jesus. What's the doctrine of the hypostatic union? What are the 7 baptisms, 4 dry and 3 wet in the Bible? What's a Christophany? What's a theophany? What's redemption, reconciliation? I don't know. I love Jesus. You can't love what you don't know, I would think. In any event, yeah, they're Muslims because they're born into it. And there are 7 major religions in the world. 7 major religions. And all of them say, we're the truth, the other ones are liars, right? Well, you got a 1 in 7 chance of getting the right one. Those are good odds in Vegas. Not good at all. And we're all riding the death train. Now, some of y'all out there, the train's further down the track than others. But it's going to make a stop. So if you're a deep thinker, because most people are a deep thinker, really? You have never had an original thought in your entire life. And neither have I. And you never will. You tell me what your thoughts are, and I'll tell you where you got them. Solomon wrote this 3,000 years ago. He said, "There's nothing new under the sun." And there is nothing new under the sun. The issue in life is that you hear both sides, and you decide which side of the fence you're going to line up on. That's it. That's all it is. So radical Islam, of course, is the fourth category of terrorism. In the back of this book I've got, this is my 7th edition of a book on terrorism law, which looks good from 5 feet away. It really is a good book. And it's been translated into Spanish. It's used in a lot of law schools and other places around the country. But I've got a chart in the back with case after case after case after case, because the Department of Justice has primary authority to prosecute all terrorism cases, the Department of Justice. And since 9/11, 90% of all the terrorism cases, what do you think? It's been right wing, left wing, or radical Islam? Radical Islam. In Texas alone, we've had 5 major plots. Hassan got through, slaughtered 13 people. We had a fellow in Dallas that was going to blow up a skyscraper. He had ordered phenol from a pharmaceutical company in North Carolina. But we've broken up a lot of plots in this country. Hundreds of plots of radical Islamic extremists. Now, one of the things that is disturbing right now in this time of our history is that the jihadists, and these are people that basically believe that it's okay to murder in the name of Islam. There's a lot of them in this country. There's a Pew study that I recorded in my book, and this is Pew. This is a reputable, a reputable polling authority. They say that 25% of Muslim males in this country between the ages of I think it's 18 and 27 believe that it's okay to murder, kill in the name of Islam. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. And so they believe in this concept called jihad. And Roy talked about jihad a little bit, but let me go into a little bit more detail, because if you're going to stop these people, you got to know how they think. I've been to Guantanamo Bay, and as a lawyer, we like to loosen up our ties and say to these folks, "What do y'all want? You want some land? You want some money?" If they could answer you, if I had one of these folks on the stage, what do you think they would say to you? Yeah, that's their negotiating position. We want to kill you. That doesn't leave me with much of a response, does it? I don't have a lot of negotiating room when that's your position. So we either got to detain them or kill them in the short term, or in the long term, we've got to close down the Hitler youth camps that turn this stuff out. 80% of the people in Afghanistan, they can't even read or write. Even if they wanted to read the Quran or the Hadith, they can't do it. So who tells them this stuff? And where do they get it? And what does it say? Well, as Roy indicated, Islam is a works religion. And most of the religions, in fact, all religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, the Tao, Confucianism, Islam, they're works religion. They believe that man is bad, God is good. Their goal is the same as Christianity. Your goal is when you die, you want to have union with God. You want to go to hell. Because all religions have a heaven and a hell. But most religions are a works religion. What that means is that you follow this moral code. Don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, help folks across the street, give money to the poor, do all these nice things. And then when you die, you'll be judged. In fact, Muhammad was asked, "Are you going to paradise when you die?" You know what he said? "I don't know. I will be judged by Allah in the judgment seat of Allah. If I'm good enough, I get in. If not, I don't get in." And that's Muhammad. But there's an exception to this works policy, and that's called jihad. Because in contrast to works, and you might understand this because we come from a Judeo-Christian tradition, Christians believe in the concept of grace, and of course Christians say that true Judaism believes in the concept of grace as well. Genesis chapter 15, verse 6, how was Abraham saved? 500 years before Moses, there was no Moses. It says that Abraham believed in the Lord and it was credited to his account for righteousness. That's all he did. He believed. So grace is basically that God is perfect. And for example, if we want to go down to Corpus Christi and swim in France, you ain't going to make it. I don't care how good of a swimmer you are, you cannot make it. And if you had every good deed credited to your bank account that every human ever did in the history of mankind, you're still going to hell. Because God is absolute perfection. If you want to live with God, you must be perfect. Oh, wow. How can I work my way in that system? If that's your premise, you can't work your way in. And that's why God developed the plan of grace, that somebody does it for you, and that's the Messiah. Messiah died in 30 AD on the cross, spiritual death. He screamed out, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," and he suffered spiritual death for every sin that every human ever did, was slammed into his body, causing him to scream at the top of his lungs. And then at the end of that, he said, after 3 hours of sin bearing, he said, tetelestai, which means it is finished. Actually, it's just one word, teleo, means finished. What's finished? Well, he died on the cross for every sin that every human ever did. You believe that, and boom, you're in, you can never get out. That's why they call it the good news, not almost the good news. Once you're in, you're in. That's very attractive if you have a realistic assessment of the problem of a perfect God. But if you believe that God is like Santa Claus and he'll kind of let you in if you're just good enough, well, if that's your premise, then have a nice day. And you're going to try to impress God. It's like you're in a jet airplane, you want to get out and push. They don't need your help. Don't need your help. But the works religion is very prominent in human culture for some reason because people love to be impressed by themselves and they think God's going to be impressed with them. So jihad says this though. Why am I telling you all this? Because we've got to contrast this about jihad. Jihad says, look, you bypass the judgment seat of Allah if you die in jihad. And that means that if you die killing the infidel, then you don't get judged by Allah. You bypass it and go straight to paradise. So it's not really grace, is it? Because you got to do it or work. You got to kill yourself. If you don't kill yourself, it doesn't count. So Hassan is paralyzed. He gets some extra brownie points, but he doesn't get an automatic pass to paradise. In fact, Mohammed Atta, who is one of the ringleaders of the 9/11 hijacking, if you read the 9/11 Commission report, the rental car, he had a note saying, remember, you're going to paradise and the dark-eyed virgin is waiting for you. Because not only do you bypass the judgment seat of Allah, you get 70 supernaturally created virgins. So men, if you like women with big feet, they're going to be ginormous feet. Right to your specifications. I see some ladies here nudging their husbands. And you get 2 women you saw here on the earth to join the harem. Now, I've traveled the world a lot. If it's true, and I don't believe it's true, but if it is true, it's going to be Texans, Alabamians, or Mississippians. I haven't seen much else as far as female poetry. And you ever notice why when they interview the mothers of suicide bombers, they ask, how was Ahmed? What do they say? Oh, Ahmed was a pillar of the community. We're named a school after him. They never say that, well, Ahmed was a nut. You know why? Because Ahmed's up there with a piece of paper, and he can elect, it depends on which version you read, either 30 or 70 relatives get to bypass the judgment seat and go straight to paradise. So you never criticize them, because they'll strike your name off the list. Now, because they believe this doesn't mean it's true, but it means they believe it, and you've got to admire that. When I was in the Army, I was never excited about dying for my country.